I'm really happy, though, about our next guest, Anita Moorjani, who is one of my favorite people talking about going to the other side, her near-death experience. And what's so fantastic about Anita is that everything she says is from her own experience. It's not necessarily from books or other teachers. She had a fantastic, unbelievable experience of really going beyond the veil and living through it and coming back to tell us there's no reason to fear, there's no reason to doubt. It's just about loving yourself into life. And she had to die to find out that, and she has a wisdom for everyone that we don't have to go that route. We can do it right here. So happy Anita's here with us today. Are you familiar with her at all, Isha?
I am. I'm actually so excited to interview her today because I heard her story at Contact in the Desert, and I was the person at the back of the room bawling
Mm,
my eyes out when she did
yeah.
the meditation.
Mm.
So I have a very personal resonance with her work, and hence was very excited to have the honor of interviewing her today. So
I
yeah,
know. I always tear up when she talks because it's just her life she's sharing, which is
yeah. I
fantastic.
have
And there
so
she
many
is.
questions for her too. Oh, here she is.
Hi, Anita.
Hello.
Hi, both of you. It's so lovely to meet you, Isha. And hi, Alan. Again, it's always wonderful to see you.
Thank you. And thank you for the interview you did with me. Let's do it again. Okay.
I'd love that.
All right.
You ask
Well,
great questions.
well, say hello to Danny, and I'm going to let Isha take over, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
Yes, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. I hope I can do half the justice I know Alan would do for our interview today. He's a beautiful,
Uh,
beautiful person.
he is, but I'm sure you will, Isha. It's lovely to meet you.
Well, I'm very excited to introduce you. I'm sure you need very little introduction, but I am just going to share a little bit of a spiel for those of you who might not be familiar with your work. So, Anita Moorjani is an international speaker, best-selling author. She was born in Singapore to Indian parents, grew up in Hong Kong, and in 2006, after battling cancer for nearly 4 years, Anita had a near-death experience. She's written all of this in her book called Dying to Be Me. So, Anita, yeah, I have a bajillion questions for you, of course. I have heard your story, but there probably are some people here who haven't heard your story. So, maybe if you'd like to start with just a bit of a recap of what happened, and then I can go into all the questions that I have for you today.
Okay, perfect. That's perfect. So, a recap of what happened is that I was battling lymphoma, that's lymphatic cancer, for 4 years, where I had, by the time I was at end stage, I had tumors the size of golf balls from the base of my skull, all around my neck, under my arms, in my chest, all the way down to my abdomen. At that point, like, in my fourth year of dealing with it, and it had progressed and metastasized, um, my body stopped absorbing nutrition. So I weighed about 85 pounds. My lungs were constantly filled with fluid. I had open skin lesions. And because my body had stopped absorbing nutrition, um, I had no strength. My muscles started to atrophy and I could no longer walk. I was in a wheelchair. But when I would lie down, when I would lie flat, I would choke on my own fluid. And also, like, I had so little strength in my body that even if I was sitting up, I couldn't even hold my head up. My head would be hanging down. There wasn't even enough strength in my neck muscles to keep my head upright. So I was in really bad shape, in a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort. And then I entered what the doctors would call the final stages, where I was dying. My organs started to shut down and I went into a coma. And the doctors told my family that I was not going to come out of the coma and that I may not even make it through the night. But unbeknownst to everyone around me, my family were distraught. I was in the hospital room and my family members were there. But unbeknownst to everyone around me, I had left my body. My physical body was in the coma, but I felt like I had left my body. So I was separate from my body, and I was aware of my physical body lying there on that hospital bed. But I was not in my body. I felt incredible. I felt light and free, and all the pain and the discomfort from all the past years had gone. They'd just gone. And I felt powerful, and I felt like really powerful and big. And my energy was so huge that I was aware of this body, frail body, lying on the hospital bed, and it looked so small and insignificant compared to how I was now feeling. And I wanted my family to know, my family were all around my physical body, and I wanted them to know that I was fine and I felt incredible. But I wasn't able to communicate with them because I didn't have vocal cords. I didn't have a physical body. I didn't have any biology. So I wasn't able to communicate with them verbally, but I could feel everything that they were feeling. It was like I was aware of all the emotions of everybody around me, including the doctors, the nurses who were all trying to help me. And I was connected to all these different machines. I was aware that my brother was on a plane trying to get to me in time. So I was in a hospital in Hong Kong, and my brother was in India, and he was trying to get on a flight to get to me before I died. And I was aware of his emotions and his franticness of trying to reach me. And I actually felt that, oh, I need to stay alive until he gets here, or he'll be really distraught if he gets here and I'm already dead. So I actually recall waiting for family members to arrive, so that they wouldn't see me already dead. And I then started to become aware of a bigger and bigger, like it was as if my awareness was expanded, and I became aware of a bigger and bigger reality that is beyond this physical reality, where I started to become aware of my loved ones who'd crossed over before me, like my dad, who had passed 10 years prior. I became aware that he was there. My best friend, who died of cancer 2 years prior, she was there. And there were so many other beings there, many of whom I didn't recognize from this lifetime. They could have been spirit guides, ascended masters. I didn't recognize them from this lifetime, but all I felt from them was just love, pure, unconditional love, no judgment whatsoever. And there was a lot that happened in that experience, and so I'm going to just give you a very short version, and then we can unravel it as you ask me more questions, Isha. But I did reach a point where I was aware that I had a choice as to whether to come back into my body or to continue on the other side. And no part of me wanted to come back, because I had been suffering, my family had been suffering looking after me. Who wants to come back into a sick and dying body? But then I became aware that I understood why I had got sick. I was like in this state of clarity. And I started to understand who I am and what my purpose is. And it was with that understanding that I felt my dad was saying to me, and we don't communicate in words, it's purely like thought transformation. That's more than ESP. It's literally whatever he wanted me to know, he was able to transfer to me. And my dad wanted me to know that now that I know the truth of who I really am, if I choose to go back into my body would heal very, very quickly. And I also became aware that my husband, Danny, and my purpose was linked. And if I didn't come back, he wouldn't be able to fulfill his purpose either. So with that, I made the choice to come back. And my dad said to me, or communicated to me, go back and live your life fearlessly. And I started to come out of the coma. And I'd been in the coma for about 30 hours. And I started to come out of the coma, and I saw my family there. My brother had arrived. He'd got off the plane came straight to the hospital from the airport. And within 4 days of coming out of the coma, my golf ball sized tumors started to shrink and soften, and could be visibly be seen to have shrunk by 50 or 60% within 4 days. And the tubes were slowly coming out. I didn't need them anymore. Within 3 weeks, the doctors were having trouble finding any trace of cancer in my body. And within 5 weeks of having the NDE, they let me go home to live my life cancer-free. And that was in March of 2006. And here I am today doing what I do.
I think I speak for a lot of people when I say we're very grateful that you made the choice to come back. And I know you've helped a lot of lives in the process of that. The one thing that really resonates for me personally after, hearing your story a couple of times and going through a lot of your materials out there's one bit where you mentioned that you were in that state and you had this sense of what God is, and you say that instead of it being like a being or a person or an entity, you say that it's a state of being. So tell me what that feels like.
Okay, so that is something that when I speak about, in fact, interestingly, I get pushback, not from everyone. There are a lot of people who say, oh my God, I relate to that. But I do get a lot of pushback from people who still believe that God is a being outside of ourselves. I had always believed that. I had always believed that there is a God, a deity, a being outside of us who's watching us and judging us, and we have to appease that to that God and sacrifice or do things to win the favor of that God. And we fear that God and we revere that God and we give it a male gender. So when I crossed over, I was really surprised, pleasantly surprised, but our emotions are very different on that side. It's more like a relief and a recognition and oh, of course, this is what it is. It was, so the way I describe it is I say, God is not a being, but a state of being. We become that state. You realize that you are not separate from God. Our consciousness is the state of God. So when we leave this physical planet, when we cross over, although we know, everybody knows, we leave behind our physical body and our material possessions, and it's our soul or our consciousness that crosses over. But I don't think many people realize that not only do you leave behind your physical body and your physical material possessions, you also leave behind your gender, your race, your culture, your religion. You leave all of that behind, your beliefs, your trauma, your baggage. You leave all of that behind. And what crosses over is pure consciousness, pure essence, pure love. And without the limitations of your baggage and your culture and your religion and all these things, and it's just pure consciousness, pure essence, it's just pure unconditional love, you realize that that you're infinite. There's no physical restriction to who you are. You are limitless. And in that limitlessness, you realize you are connected to every other being. You know what everyone is feeling, thinking, without having to ask them. You're literally able to feel every other soul's emotions, knowledge, feeling. You're able to access it. All of us together, it's like we become God when we are without our physical bodies. We are the ones that do the judging. We are the ones that become aware we need to evolve. The way we behaved wasn't right, if that's the case. I actually realized that my entire life, I had spent my life being in fear and in reverence of invisible gods and the invisible afterlife. And I lived my life to create the perfect afterlife or to create the perfect next incarnation, when I realized I'm just supposed to live a life of love and joy and passion in this life. That's why I came here, without fear of the next life. And there's no one outside of me doing the judging. It's within my own energy and my own godhood when we're there, that we kind of go, oh, I could have done this better. I should have done this differently. But we also become aware that what we do, and even the mistakes we make, and even the people we hurt, comes from the limitations of our own beliefs and our own culture and our own trauma and our own baggage. So it was an incredible experience.
Wow. And I think the concept of that for some people, especially if you've grown up with a lot of maybe religious beliefs, it can seem very expansive or even untrue from that perspective. But you've just described it so beautifully when you said that it's we are the God, not I or you or any one person, but we together as a collective are this consciousness. And I wonder, I'm hugely passionate about healing as well. That's where I started my journey like some 10 years ago. And I've heard so many stories of people who've gone to the other side and suddenly they've miraculously healed. I'm curious about what causes that. Is it just the beliefs? Is it something at a physical molecular level that suddenly changes? What do you think is the catalyst for these spontaneous healings to happen?
So there is something that switches your cells around. And this is one of the things that doctors who studied my case, but they studied it, of course, from a medical perspective. And it was like they all agreed that I should be dead, that there was no part of my prognosis that showed that I would make it through, because I had trillions of cancer cells in my body, which were replicating faster than the healthy cells. And there was a point at which literally the cancer cells stopped replicating, but the healthy cells sped up in replicating. So a switch was flicked at some point. Now, I know the switch was flicked when I made the decision that I am coming back. And so a decision made at that level, from the soul level, is far greater than anything just on the physical level. It kind of starts at the soul level, and it carries downward to your physical. So in other words, when I came out of the near-death experience, my body was still physically very sick. And so even though I was awake that first day, the first few hours, the first 24 hours, the doctors were still saying, we have to keep observing her. Don't raise your hopes. They were saying it to my family. Don't raise your hopes. She's still in critical condition. But I knew that I was already healed and my body has to catch up. And what I realized is that when you are in touch with your soul and your soul's purpose and your soul's intention for being here, that is the greatest, the greatest place from which to make the decision as to whether you're going to be healthy or not. So I want to be really clear on this, and I want to be sensitive to people who are going through illnesses, because even when I was really, really sick, I was so passionate about trying to heal. And yet it felt like nothing was working until I got to the near-death experience, until I got to the other side, which is why I've made it my mission to share what happened. One thing why I want to be sensitive to this is because I don't want to come across as though I'm saying I'm special and that's why I healed, because that's not true. The reason I share my story is because I think that I truly believe that this can be available to everyone. If I thought I was special, I would not actually be sharing it. I'm sharing it only because I think this is something that everybody needs to know. And this is why I want to share it in a way that can be understood by everyone, which is why I'm so passionate about it. And this is why I put out so much content about it, because people learn in different ways. So one of the things that I realized when I was on the other side was that every thought, every decision, every choice I made led me to that point of being on that hospital bed. And to simplify this, my entire life, I had made all my choices from a place of fear. And we have two choices. We have the choice of making all our decisions from a place of fear or a place of love. And when we're constantly choosing fear, we end up living a life that is based on all our fears. But when we make all our choices from a place of love, we end up living a life that is based on what our soul came here intending to do. So I put it in so many different ways. One is, are you living your life from fear or love? Another is, are you living your life from a place of negativity or positivity? But sometimes with negative and positive, that can be subjective. So the fear and the love is usually a better way of describing it. And when I came back from that near-death experience and I had to integrate back into this life, I found it very challenging. And here's why. Because in our physical three-dimensional world, in this information age, most of the information that we get fed is fear-based, not love-based. And I want to give you more examples, but I'm going to let you ask me more questions to help me unravel this and unpack this, because sometimes I get caught in a spiral.
Hello, Neil. Can you pop me back on? Hey, there we are. Gosh, there's so much to unpack there, Anita, and I think you've really summarized it beautifully in terms of the choices that we have between love and fear. The one thing that really stood out for me was going back to where you said, I had healed, but my body needed to catch up. And the first thing I thought was, well, then who's the I? Because we get so identified with the body. And so I'd love for you to go into that a little bit, where we're having this human experience. If the healed you is the I and the body hasn't caught up, what is the I? Who is the I?
So the I is the infinite self that is connected to everybody, everything. The I is the part of me that has lived forever and will continue to live beyond the physical body. And all of us can be aware of this I, because this is the I that made the decision that I'm going to come into this planet in a physical body in this time and this place and experience life in 3 dimensions in this time and space. And that is the intention we come with. And then once we're here, we are conditioned to forget. And I honestly, and this is the me, the bigger me, I'm not convinced that we're meant to forget. And this is the popular thing that we're told. All the time we're told, you're meant to forget that. You're meant to forget that. I don't think that we're meant to forget that, because I remembered it all, and I had the near-death experience, and my life has improved as a result. And I think we should be born with that knowledge. I think everybody should have that knowledge. I don't think we're meant to forget that. I think it would make us better people, kinder, more loving, more evolved, more compassionate, less divisive, if we remembered who we are, that infinite part of ourselves. But I think it has been conditioned out of us. And I think that more and more people are waking up and remembering today, because the world is realizing that our teaching, our training, our school system, our government system, our medical system, all of it is causing us to forget, is conditioning us, is dumbing us down, making us forget who we truly are. So basically, I believe that the I is the I that is aware that we are so much more. The real I, the I, the soul, that soul doesn't care if you vote left or right or have been vaccinated or not vaccinated. That soul knows you are a soul, and that soul is connected to me and connected to you. And you and I are connected. When we connect on a soul level, I know your pain and fears, and I know what you love. You know my pain and fears, and you know what I love. And all of us can connect on that level. But for some reason, we have become highly competitive. and highly divisive, because I believe it's because certain people benefit from that. But if we really want to evolve as a race, as a species, we need to really realize that this physical self is not who we are. And, and because we believe it's who we are, because we've become competitive, because we've become fearful, we fear people who are different from us. And therefore, we spend more money on creating weapons to kill each other than we do spend on feeding each other. We buy into fear more than we buy into love. So one of the things I realized when I came back from the near-death experience is that we've bought into this illusion that we are all separate and that there's not enough to go around. It's basically a scarcity illusion, that I have to eliminate the competition if I want to get ahead. There's not enough to go around, as I said. And so, and we see anyone different from us as being someone to be fearful of. And we are brought up this way and conditioned this way, and our education system teaches us this. We've also bought into the illusion that we are victims of our illnesses, whereas in actuality, when we do have an illness, it's a calling from our soul. It's a wake-up call saying, hey, change directions, love yourself more, see yourself as a soul. You're now buying into the fear. You're buying into the fear of following a path that's not truly you. How many of us take jobs that we hate, but we do it because it pays better? And then we get stuck in that job because we create a lifestyle around the money we earn, but we hate what we do, but we don't dare leave our job because it pays for our lifestyle. How many people do that all the time? And they get burned out. Getting burned out is a sign that you are not following your soul's purpose. So just to give you a little story, to give you an example of what I'm talking about, when I came back from the near-death experience, the harder part was now living life the way I knew I wanted to live it in this physical world that is not ready for that. So I decided I'm not going to go back to work the way I used to. I'm going to follow my passion. I'm going to do what I love. I used to be someone that was a people pleaser. I was afraid of displeasing people. I was afraid of not having enough money. I would take the job that paid more. I was afraid of disapproval. I was afraid of not fitting in. I was afraid of everything. I was afraid of getting cancer. I used to follow all the protocols to avoid getting cancer, but it was out of a fear of cancer, not out of a love of my body or a reverence for health. I used to take all the anti-cancer, antioxidant supplements. I used to follow an anti-cancer diet out of a fear of cancer. So my life was based and built on fear. And I thought I was living a healthy life. And yet I got cancer, and the cancer got worse. And it was only when I was on the other side did I realize, oh, the one thing missing is love. It's love. And if I just did everything from a place of love, my life would turn around. And I came back from this other state telling that to my friends. And my friends would say, you're delusional. It's amazing you got healed. You're very blessed. You had a spontaneous healing. But you can't decide to live from a place of love and not work for the money. And you've got to get real now. Get real. Buckle down. Get a real job. Do what you're meant to do. And so I said, nope, I can't go back to being the person I used to be. I'm not worried about society. I'm not going to take a job just to pay my bills and maintain that life. So we downsized. We moved to a much lower rental place, and we downsized everything so that we could discover, so I could discover who I am. And my husband was so supportive. And we decided to just go on our own path. And we lost a lot of our friends because they were still living the high life where it was important to live in an amazing home and have a beautiful big car. I'm not saying that I renounced material things completely, but I will get to that part in a moment. I think that we're here to even enjoy the material. However, the number one thing for me became about following my passion and doing what I love, and not just pursuing material success for the sake of it alone. I could no longer do that. And I was ready to give up everything. The number one thing was to love myself and follow my passion. And so friends said, oh, you're delusional. Look at you. You have to keep downsizing. You're not going to find a job this way. But what happened is I just kept writing and writing and writing. And I knew I just had to be fearless. And my writing somehow went viral. I posted it on a website. I didn't even put my real name. It went viral. Wayne Dyer discovered my story and invited me and told Hay House, the publishers, about me. And then he had me tour with him, and my book became a New York Times bestseller. And today I love what I do. I never expected to be an author, a speaker, never expected it. If you knew me, the person I was before, I was someone who was super shy, super introverted. I'm the last person I can think of who would be doing the work I'm doing, but here I am. I can't imagine doing anything else. And I'll admit I am rewarded materially for it, but it's so that I can keep doing what I do and do it better. My passion is not the material rewards, but I do have more than enough. My passion is in just doing what I'm doing. And those same friends that called me delusional today, they come back into my life and they say, wow, it's amazing what you're doing. You're so blessed. I wish I could have your life. You're out there teaching all these people. Why aren't you teaching us? Why aren't you helping us? And I say, well, first you have to be delusional. And so my point is that we have to carve out a life very different from what's been ingrained in us by this three-dimensional, five-sensory, fear-based reality. And I know that we're born knowing our purpose and who we are, but it gets conditioned out of us. It would serve us better to go back and rediscover who we really are. Why is my soul here? Discover the power of your soul, the intention, and follow the path of your soul, and have that take the lead and your mind have that follow. The way we live right now, I said love and fear. We're torn between love and fear. That's one way of looking at it. The other is we're torn between our mind and our heart. Our heart is the path to our soul. But we have been allowing our mind to lead for far too long. The mind is useful, absolutely useful. You need it to do the work and to pay the bills, but you need to lead with your heart. So
it's so beautiful. And every time I hear your story, especially about getting picked up by Wayne Dyer, I think, wow, it's such a testament to when you follow your passion, it's like everything in the universe backs you. And yet we want to see the results before we're willing to take action. And you just said, well, you know what? I'm following my passion no matter what. And then you had all the support, all the, material abundance, everything came in to back that. But it happened because you were so convicted. And you could have, in that moment, had a choice and gone, well, I'm going to go back to my high-paying job. And then that would have been a very different lifestyle for you. So I think there's an element of courage in that, right? To say, actually, this is what I'm going to stand for. Even if I don't see the next step, I'm going to be crazy enough to see what happens, right?
Yes. And here's the interesting thing, though. Your mind gets completely twisted around when you can really get into your soul. And that's what I encourage people to do. Get out in nature, connect with your soul. And what I mean by your mind getting twisted around is that we as physical beings, me as a physical being, I can see looking back now, yeah, wow, it did take courage. I can see that from the physical perspective. But from the perspective of the soul, from the near-death perspective, when I'm on that side as a soul and I'm looking back at my life and I'm thinking, wow, why would the soul come here with the intention of doing one thing like helping people and sharing a message, but yet choose to go and suffer by taking a job that they don't even like just because it gives them material things, that feels like harder work and more suffering than coming back to do what the soul intended it to do. So
that's the irony in the whole thing, right? We think it's so hard to do the spiritual work, but in reality, I mean, the amount of energetic output that goes into maintaining a life that's inauthentic, that's exhausting. It's so exhausting.
it's really exhausting. And what I actually want to do is I want to give your listeners a tool, which is just a tangible way of putting what happened to me to help you do that and how my values changed. So what I realized is that we are brought up to believe that our number one value, pretty much the way the world is structured, our number one value is finance. It's money. It's like everything is measured, like when you get a job, it's measured by how much are you going to earn. And our medical system puts profits before health. We call it a healthcare system, but it isn't. It's a sickness scare system because more money is made from sickness. And so even our education system, they don't pay our teachers enough. And these are people who are looking after and shaping young minds. And so our world, our political system, our governments, all of it, they put profits before lives and profits before well-being. What I realized when I was on the other side is that if I put my well-being, my soul, and well-being means everything from it's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, it's your entire well-being. If you put that as your number one priority before money or anything, even before other people, you would serve yourself and the world and your loved ones around you very, very well. So if you made that your number one value. And so the way I view it is that number one is if you think of your energy, your life force energy, as a currency. So your life force energy is what courses through your physical body, keeping it alive. And if you think of your life force energy as a currency, and you imagine that a good night's sleep gives you 12 units of life force energy. So you wake up in the morning with 12 units of life force energy. Now the question is, how are you going to spend those 12 units? Now, when you make choices from a place of fear, it depletes your life force energy. When you make choices from a place of love, it actually enhances your life force energy. So let's say you go to a job you hate, but you're only holding on to it out of fear of not having money. You don't like your job, he bullies you. You don't like your boss, he bullies you. And so after an 8-hour workday, your energy is depleted. Let's say it depletes a unit an hour. So you come home with only 4 units of life force energy in you. And then let's say you're in a relationship that you're not happy with at all, but you're only in it because you're afraid of being alone. You think, oh, it's better than being home alone, or I'm getting some benefits, but you don't realize that if you freed yourself from this relationship, which you're not happy in, it's abusive, whatever, if you freed yourself, you would actually be open to find someone you love you. But no, you're in it out of fear. So in the evening, that relationship also takes another 4 units out of you. So you go to bed with 0 units of energy. Because you've had a bad day, you have a restless sleep. So you wake up, instead of 12 units of energy, you've only got 8 units of energy. Again, you go to a job you hate, you've lost all 8 units, you're at 0. So then you go back to your relationship and it depletes you even more, you're at -4. So in other words, you're in energy deficit now. Now think of the reverse. Imagine you wake up in the morning with 12 units of energy. And because you make your choices from a place of love, remember, love gives you energy equity. Fear gives you energy deficit. So you go to a job you love. You're doing, like, I love what I do now. I love traveling. I love speaking. I love the public events. and it feeds you. So instead of having 12 units of energy at the end of a workday, you've got 18, and you feel really good. And you in a relationship you love, you have plenty of energy to spread to everybody around you, to give to people, to love people with. And you have a good night's sleep, and you wake up in the morning and you've now got 30 units of energy. Now, here's what happens. When you live a lifetime of energy deficit, of going down and down and down, that's when it starts to deplete your physical body. That's how you get illnesses. That's because also when you're living that life of fear and you're in an energy deficit, you're also not doing what your soul intended you to do. When you make your choices from a place of love, what it means when you follow your passion, you're actually doing what your soul intended for you to do, and you're getting energy equity. Now, that leads to healing. The more energy equity you have, the more healing energy you're getting. And this is why I say, even when you choose a doctor, a healthcare worker, choose one that gives you energy equity, not one that gives you fear of your illness or disease. Select carefully. Everything you choose needs to give you energy equity. There will be times when you will need to expend energy. There will be times where you will face loved ones who are going through trauma or crisis, but you will have the energy to give to them. The second thing, real quickly, I want to leave you with is that giving yourself energy equity is the most unselfish thing you can do. Because if you think of all of us as beings that are connected to each other, which is what I explained, we're all beings that are connected to each other, but we've been taught that we're separate. But if we realize that we are all connected, think of this earth as one organism, and every being is one cell of an organism. And like your physical body is one living organism with lots of cells, little cells. When you have more healthy cells than sick cells, you're healthy. When your healthy cells are replicating faster than your sick cells, you're healthy. But when your sick cells are replicating faster, that makes your body sick. The same way as a human race, if trying to evolve, if all of us are working on making our choices from love, loving more, expanding our energy, having more energy equity, we are expanding our energy and overlapping and entraining all the people around us. That energy is uplifting the people around us. If we are all in energy deficit, drained and depleted, we are drawing on the energy of the people around us. So in other words, when you just heal yourself, find your joy, follow your passion, expand your energy equity, you are contributing to the whole. Each of us are only obligated to find our own passion and expand our own energy equity. And in that way, we can actually have a more healed, evolved, healthier whole planet. That's what I wanted to leave you with.
Oh, I feel the wholesomeness in what you've just shared with us, Anita, and your message today is just so beautiful. As a sort of final message, I guess, before we let you go, you know, when I was sitting there in Contact in the Desert and you shared that beautiful experience, the workshop that you did, and we went in this beautiful field of light. We actually crossed into the veil, and then there was a point where you said, okay, it's time for you to come back now. And that was the moment where I started just crying and crying because I just didn't want to come back. It was so beautiful and so wonderful. And at the same time, you know, I wish that people would take on board your message so they don't have to have the traumatic experience of death or a near-death experience, and to remember that we can go there at any time. There are plenty of tools. I know you have plenty on your website as well, Anita. They can go to your website. They can read your books. There's lots of spaces where people who want to experience this for themselves without dying or getting cancer, you can do that. And I think that's the biggest thing that I would want to share, having experienced that myself in person with you. And that memory has really stayed with me since then. So I just thank you so deeply for your work.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And yes, and my message is that you don't have to die to learn what I live. You don't have to die to understand what it is I'm saying, and anybody can do it. And I actually think it's a great idea for every human being to experience dying before they actually die, because it will change their lives. And, now that you experienced the contrast and the fact that you didn't want to come back, that is a message of how, and again, not to judge you or anything, but that is a message of how far away your life is from what you want it to be, because our work is to create that here on this earth. And the fact that we are like, oh, I don't want to come back, means we haven't done a great job in creating that. And we're all in the same boat. It is so amazing on the other side. It really is. And this is why I want people to know that if you have a loved one who has crossed over, please understand that if they chose not to come, they made the more unconditionally loving choice. In other words, they believed they could help you more and love you more from that side than when they were in the physical. And I felt that from my dad. I wanted to also mention that my dad was so limited by his culture and the community. And I had such a terrible relationship with him here in the physical, that when I experienced him on the other side, all I felt was unconditional love. And I have felt his love stronger and more powerful as a spirit than I ever did in the physical. And so I want people to know that not everybody gets the choice, because if it's your time, it's your time. But if they do get a choice, they will always make the more unconditionally loving choice.
That's so beautiful. And what a beautiful note to end on, Anita. It's been such a wonderful conversation. And I just send you so many love and blessings. And thank you from myself and everyone who's listening to this as well. It's just been such a beautiful and enlightening conversation.
Thank you, Isha. Thank you very much. You're a great interviewer.
Thank you.